Hello everyone, welcome back to book club. This is a very, very, very special week to me, and I've been looking forward to this for so long. And also we've had great news this week. It's been a very emotional week. I know for a lot of people it was stressful, but getting the results that we wanted this election. Hi Milo. Getting the results that we worked so hard for this election wasn't due to chance, and I'm just so happy and proud of all of the hard work that everyone was doing leading up to this election. So that has been incredible to see and celebrate. Now, this week, I'm like freaking out because this has been a book club so long coming. Alisson and I have been talking about this for a very long time, and I'm just so happy that we get to do it in the midst of being on a high from the election. So we are doing It Being Lolita this week, which is Alisson's first book and memoir. And it's about her experience in high school with her teacher, Mr. North, who basically gives Alisson the book Lolita, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. I have to disclaim that I've never read Lolita for multiple reasons, but after reading this book, it gave me some insight into kind of what Lolita is about, and I know Lolita is brought up a lot in literature and referenced a lot, especially in this book. So yeah, so it's about Alisson's relationship with her teacher, and he gives her the book Lolita, telling her basically that it is a beautiful story about love, which now everyone can agree it is not. And the book kind of becomes a backdrop to their connection that blooms from like a crush into a romance and a relationship. She's he convinces her that that book is a love affair, when in reality it is not. As time kind of progresses in the book and in Alisson's life, because it is a memoir, you see how his grip on her tightens and how the relationship quickly becomes abusive. Excuse Milo playing with a bone in the background. He is loving it, so I'm just not going to interrupt him. But yeah, reading the book was just so eye-opening for me, and I think, as a young woman, you think you're in control a lot of the time, and realizing what consent is and when you can give consent, and as a minor that is not something that you can give to an adult. And it's a very interesting perspective, because like Nabokov's Lolita, it's actually told from a man's perspective, and written by men, and a lot of the time stories like this are written by men, so to have a very authentic and true story written by a woman, I think really gives light to a category that doesn't always get told from the correct perspective or from the woman's perspective. Now, I think like as I was reading the book, sort of in the wake of what becomes eventually an abusive relationship, Alisson is faced sort of again and again with the story of her past, and eventually once she gets out of the relationship, she rereads Lolita in college from a different perspective, and it kind of leads her to working with teenage girls and doing incredible work that I'm so grateful that she does, and I know has helped me and has helped so many other young women, as this book has done as well. So I'm just so grateful that Alisson exists and that she told her story and has not used it as a crutch, but used it to help and empower other young women. So I'm just like her biggest fan ever. Before I bring Alisson on, I want to like gush about how amazing she is. And then I'll bring her on to talk about her life and her book. So it was her first book, and her writings have been published in the New York Times and the Paris Review, and basically every other literary thing you can imagine. And she teaches creative writing at NYU, which is so cool, and that's actually what I wanted to study when I was in high school, so I think it's so awesome that she teaches that. And she's the founder and editor-in-chief of Pigeon Pages, which is a New York City literary journal and reading series. So a fellow book nerd like myself, of course I love her. I want to kind of connect it like this sort of idea of Lolita, it's very common throughout literature. And it's not necessarily unique to each story, but I think the perspective completely shifts the narrative of Lolita. And so that's why to have a book told from a woman's perspective. I know we did My Dark Vanessa, which was a fictional book on here that dealt with a similar situation. I think this is a very unique perspective. So I'm so excited to hear from Alisson and have her on. And yeah, who better to talk about this? I could go on forever about this book. Like, when I tell you that my copy has writing, I think there are no margins. It's just writing all over. So I'm very excited to have Alisson on so I can rave about her even more.
Hi!
Hi!
Hi! Hi.
Can
How
you
are
see
you?
me? Is it
Yeah,
working for you? Yeah?
I can see you. Can you see me?
I can't, but it could just be my connection. So as long as like you can see me, I think we're good. Oh, let me see. Oh, there you go.
Hi.
Is it better now? Is everyone good?
Hi. I can
Thank you
see
for
you.
being on here. I'm so happy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this book with you.
I'm like freaking out. I've been so excited all day. It's like truly the great, and I know we've been talking about it for so long, so.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm so honored. So yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, well, I mean, I gave you like a huge intro, but if there's anything else you want to like share with people, I thought it would be cool to read the intro of the book so people can kind of like get an understanding.
Yeah, totally. No, I don't think
Awesome.
there's anything else people need to know about me. I'm far less fancy than Kaia makes me sound. So I'm just going to read the opening of Being Lolita.
Hmm.
The first time he kissed me, it wasn't on the mouth. He told me it was a beautiful story about love. We would meet in the next town over, a diner off the highway, open all night. I would know what time to meet him in our booth in the back corner because, in the middle of his class, in front of everyone, he would look at me, look into my eyes, and 8 or 9 or 10. Sorry, my cat might interrupt occasionally.
My dog is being loud next to me too, so we're good.
Okay, if you just heard that meow, that was my cat.
I'm here with you.
She might make an appearance. We'll see.
Milo already made an appearance, so.
I know, I love it though. Who doesn't love a pet? Okay, sorry. He would look at me, look into my eyes, and write a number on the blackboard, 8 or 9 or 10, and then wipe it away with his other hand. He was an English teacher in my high school. His shirt sleeves were always chalk kissed with white. He was 26. The first time he saw me, I was 17. I would tell my parents I was going to a friend's house or studying somewhere, but really, I would be sitting across from him for hours, the pastel painting depicting Greek ruins on the wall above him, while he would grade his students' essays and I would sometimes do my Latin conjugations. Mostly, I would write to him in front of him, and he would read, and he would bring it home or sometimes read it there under the 24-hour fluorescence and then write back, all over napkins, the paper placemats, scraps from school. We probably covered hundreds of pieces with cursive, but I have only the handful that I hid from him, kept close and stolen away. Before we would leave, he'd take the papers and napkins and rip them up, put them into our water glasses, and I would watch them lose their shape and the ink bleed. I wasn't allowed to keep things. I wasn't supposed to call him Mr. when we were alone, only his first name. But I could never call him that in school. No phone calls, no emails, no touching. He made the rules. The rules were broken at that diner in our booth. It was May. Summer was almost there, and graduation hung in every classroom, crepe paper and glue glitter banners filling the halls, a countdown everywhere. You couldn't escape it. He was trying to teach me about great literature, to prepare me for what I would face as a freshman in college just a few months in the future. You should definitely be an English major, he told me, leaning back into the booth, his arms stretched out on top of the bench, taking up so much space across from me. It was the pose that, if we were on a date, unseen in a dark theater, would be the transition movement before he put his arm around me. He wouldn't bother with a fake cough, he'd just go for it, I was sure. He would read me the greats at our table of beige formica and dull silver. Poe, Dickens, Hawthorne, Carroll. He'd get into it, doing voices when he read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, laughing at literary jokes that I was surely supposed to understand, so I laughed too. I lapped it up, knowing how lucky I was to have this kind of private instruction. That night, he was reading Lolita to me, from the beginning of things. He spoke to me in Nabokov's opening lines languidly. Light of my life, fire of my loins. I thought it was the most romantic thing ever, but I was ruining it. I had a bug bite, and I kept pushing my ankles together, trying to quell the tinge of itch. He began rubbing the edges of the pages with his thumb, harder and harder as his voice grew louder, creating tiny rips in the paper as he stroked them. Finally, he asked, "A mosquito bite?" "Yes," I said, an invisible ruler against my spine. "Don't you have any calamine lotion?" "Not on me," I said. He said. He looked at me. He had my flip-flopped feet were on the cracked red leather next to him on the booth, my legs under the table, bridging the gap between our benches. Not touching, just beside him. I followed the rules. He leaned down to my foot next to him and put his lips on my pink, swollen ankle. I felt his breath on my skin. And it was like every locker in the halls of my high school swung open at once, metal kissing cinder block walls. It felt just like that. Yay! And that's the opening of the book.
I feel like I could recite it by now. I was listening and I was just like, every time.
I know, me too.
I'm sure. I just I can't even tell you how excited I am to have you on here and to talk about this. And I think we should just get into it because why not? So what was the process like of writing this book, and why did you feel like you had to write it? And then, in that moment.
Yeah. Honestly, the process was really hard. I know that we all sort of want to believe in this idea of catharsis, by writing this book, everything's better. And that hasn't been my experience. Writing the book was really, really, really hard. It was very emotional, and technically it was difficult because this was my first book. I've never written a book before. So I was like, can I write a book? I don't know. Let's see. I've never written this many words about one subject before in just a very literal sense. Someone just said writing is hard. Yes, writing is very hard.
Correct.
Writing is very hard. But I really felt like I really felt like it's been enough time where I had the perspective needed to write it. It's been almost 20 years since all of this happened. Mm-hmm. So I've had a lot of space and time to process what had happened, to try to understand what happened to me in new ways, and in a way that I could write about it. Hopefully that wasn't just, this is what happened, but, hopefully in a way that at least at times was, interesting or beautiful or something. I feel like as an artist, whenever you're trying to create something, be it, a photo, or, sorry, Nora's very excited about, she wants to meet you too. This is Nora.
Oh, hi, Nora. Oh, my goodness.
She's right here. So you might hear her occasionally. I just sort of felt like I finally had enough skill and understanding and time and frankly therapy. Like it was such an incredibly traumatic thing that, you know, you've got to process it first. You've got to like figure it out and figure it out for yourself. So yeah. And I feel like after Me Too sort of hit the mainstream back in 2018, which seems like a million years ago now,
I know.
but was it? Yeah. It's wild. It seems like it was so long ago. But after Me Too, the hope was that, you know, maybe we're in a place in the world where people might read my book. So, you know, yeah. And it is a true story. I've seen a couple people have asked that. Yes, this is about mine.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because, you know, especially after Me Too, I think it influenced a lot of women, especially to come out and tell their stories. And some women decided to do that, you know, from a fictional standpoint. What influenced your decision to make this a memoir?
I felt like this is a story that's been told, as you were saying in your intro, by men a lot. This is a story that's been told by many male writers, but it's also been told as a story that's a fantasy, you know? Like when you search Lolita on online, you find porn real quick, you know? Like you find Lolita as this very ultra sexualized object and, you know, sexualizing young women and, you know, women as this like dangerous sex pot kind of stuff. As I'm sure you understand as someone who's, you know, you're a model, like that's your job. So, but it's so much more complicated than that. Like you're not just your body, you know, young women are not just their body.
100%.
So much more. Yeah.
No, and I think like there's especially, you know, this idea around Lolita of like her being a siren and her being over sexualized and it being like because she's irresistible.
Yeah.
And like I think upon reading your book, that was my biggest takeaway is like it's not her fault. It's not her being irresistible. It's not you being irresistible. And I think like the common narrative is that, oh, she's a siren or she's this and that. You know, and it's so interesting when you really look at it and look back, even moments when you were like, oh yeah, well, it's just because I'm so powerful. You realize that's actually not the reality.
No, because, you know, whether it's something like being objectified and being sexualized, or in what happened to me, which becomes a very abusive, manipulative relationship, either way, this power is false. You know, this power is based upon, you know, abuse or patriarchy or capitalism or any of those sort of things. So it's never real, true power. And the entire point is that, you know, you're sort of getting tricked into thinking that it is, which allows you to sort of go on with it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that manipulation and grooming, I think that is done. So like, I think what drew me to your book so much is also, you know, Lolita is a much older man. And I think Lolita is how old, like 14? Which is so disturbing. But, you know, then when you get to a story like yours, you were 17 and he was 26, people even tend to overlook that, which it shouldn't be at all because you see how dangerous it can be and how much it can affect you. And I think that's the narrative that needs to be told is like, just because you're not 40 years apart, it's still not okay to be groomed and to be conditioned and to be, you know, molded from a very impressionable age like 17 is.
Yeah. Oh, completely. I think we all have this idea of like, oh, well, he wasn't married. He wasn't, as you were saying, like 40 years older than you. It's fine. And it's like, it's not. He was my teacher. I was a 17-year-old high school student. Like, how can we possibly say that that's like acceptable or okay? No. And I think that's again sort of like why I knew this was meant to be a memoir, because when we have these, you know, fantasies or fictional or, you know, film versions, we can exaggerate, you know, it makes it seem like it's not real. But in actuality, like this is how it happens a lot, you know?
Right. It's the subtlety of it. I think that's what keeps you in.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah.
And what did you think of Lolita the first time you read it? And then now when you read Lolita or your idea of Lolita, how has that changed? Because I know the first time you read it, it was sort of through Mr. North's eyes and he was sort of shaping the way that you thought about it. So how has that changed, you know, throughout different periods of your life?
Well, when I was in high school, I didn't act. I'm Nora just really wants to be involved in all of
Milo
this.
is literally right next to me.
Yeah, she's like rubbing up against me, and I'm like, okay, I'm right here.
She's a star.
You know, yeah, she is. I mean, she's very glamorous, so you know, it is what it is. Yeah, I think that when I first read Lolita, it was I didn't, and I talk about this in the book. I didn't really like carefully read Lolita. Um, I read the parts that he read to me and like, you know, sort of skimmed through it, and but I got bored by the second part. I was like, this is so, and it's long. Part two in Nabokov is really long. And frankly, I think now is, you know, as a writer and editor myself, I'm like, you know, he probably could have cut some of it. That's like blasphemy in like the Nabokov world to say that.
Right.
Not all of his work is perfect, but I think
especially not Lolita.
I know, but I think he could have used an editor. So that's one difference.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I read Lolita as a college student, I just deeply realized that not only had I been misreading the book, but the way that the book had been presented to me by my teacher was just wildly untrue and manipulative, and for a purpose, and the purpose was to, you know, control and abuse me, which is really sad. So reading it as an adult in college really sort of not only did I understand what Lolita, the Nabokov novel, was about, but I also very much, it really allowed me to understand what had happened to me more, and to have a lot of insight into my own experience, and that, you know, this is not a story about love.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And it's so interesting how you can be sort of told a narrative and just believe it. And then the second it's presented to you differently, you can like relive the past couple of years or whatever had happened to you in a totally different way.
Yeah. My screen just went purple on
I'm
me.
seeing that.
Yeah. Touch anything.
Let me take you off and re-add you, because I want to see your beautiful face.
Okay.
All right, we're going to re-add Alisson. As wonderful as the purple screen was. There we go.
That was the strangest thing.
I was like, I saw it and I was like, maybe it's just me.
No, I was like, and it wasn't Nora. Nora's right by like me.
It could have been Nora. Nora got jealous.
You know, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if she's like, what do they call it? Like a witch's,
familiar.
Like a witch's friend. Familiar. Yes. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, are you my familiar? Are you just like, you're spending too much time and attention, not on me. This is what I do.
Like, I call Milo my familiar all the time because he's just always with me. Reads minds.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, so where were we? We were on how the narrative can change, like in college. Yeah, I think that's so interesting because I also, you didn't experience the relationship as abusive, and then until someone basically presented it to you in that way, and I think that's so interesting. So what was that experience like, finally sort of having the realization and going back and reliving those years?
Overwhelming and painful. It was overwhelming and painful to suddenly realize that what I thought was this wonderful love story, because, you know, I was 17, my teacher was 26, he was the cute teacher, I had this huge crush on him, you know, I thought he was just the coolest, he played guitar, he was spending a lot of time with me, and like was giving me all this attention. Right. And that's completely natural. Like,
right. And when you
make for a teenager. Natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally normal for like a teenage girl to have a crush on her older teacher. Yes. And I was not the only one in my school who had a crush on him. Like,
right. You know, even feel even more special that he would give you extra attention.
Exactly. I thought I was so special. I thought I was so sexy. I was so mature. I was so powerful. Mm-hmm. And then when I had to face that, like, oh, that none of that was true. I wasn't special in the sense that most of these predators are serial predators. Like,
Right.
I'm not special. It's really not about me. It's about him. And he was looking for someone to
Feed
abuse.
that, yeah.
Yeah. And then I wasn't powerful. I was a victim. And that was really tough. I remember when my professor in college said, this is not a story about love. This is a story about kidnapping and abuse. And I was like, I just remember like, like it hitting me
Mm-hmm.
really hard. So, and it's honestly something that I've been sort of figuring out and grappling with since. So,
Yeah.
it's
Well, because
difficult.
it's such an interesting thing to pretty much experience something one way and then be told you lived it basically in this
Yeah.
sort of like bubble and that you didn't see any of it, and you're then grappling with reliving those years when you were there, but your perspective was so skewed by this person who was controlling you and grooming you. And yeah, that's, you're basically having to go through these years and relive every moment
Yeah.
looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. And that can happen, you know, that can happen in any sort of abusive relationship, like whether or not it's also like this huge power imbalance, whether or not it's like a predator, even if you're just in an abusive relationship, it can happen
Right.
if you're sort of like really toxic family situation. And,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, well, I found from this book that it's actually like a really common experience in that respect, as is being abused by your teacher. That's like wildly, that's like wildly common too. So,
Which, yeah, to me is like, especially because it seems like we've taken, made so much progress as a
yeah,
society, and still search Lolita and see what comes up is very disturbing. And that's, to me, why I never read it, is
yeah,
because I sort of knew that it glamorized the topic. And like, in no situation do I believe that
yeah,
that should be glamorized, especially, like reading your book and
yeah,
hearing the stories of other women that this has happened to. It's just not something that I could even like read from a perspective of it being glamorized. And you talk about in the book how, you went through a lot and struggled with depression when you were younger. Do you think that going through that and sort of carrying yourself a little bit more maturely affected your relationship, and the fact that the teacher then paid extra attention to you? And
yeah. I think that it made me more vulnerable. I think
mm-hmm.
that the fact
Right.
that I had really dealt with some really serious depression
Mm-hmm.
just a few years earlier and was still sort of coming back from in high school, I think that made me vulnerable. And that's something that I see. So, teaching at NYU, I teach undergrads. So, a lot of my students are 18, 19, they're freshmen. And so they're just like a smidge older than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're they, they're still so young. And it's so, thing that really struck me is that it's so obvious in being on the other side of a classroom, like being the
Mm-hmm.
professor. It's so obvious the ones that are
Right.
struggling, like the ones that are having like issues, the ones that are dealing. It's so obvious, and
Mm-hmm.
you can just pick those girls out of a room so easily. So it makes me even angrier because I'm sure it was so obvious that, oh,
Right.
she's easy pickings.
It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't by chance, or you just made a connection, or because you were a very talented writer, which you are. And I think that's what like angers me so much about it,
Yeah,
is the narrative always gets flipped. And you talk about
yeah,
this a lot in the book, how it's like, you're so talented and you're so special, and
yeah,
all of this is why I chose you, not I chose you
yeah,
because you're vulnerable and
yeah,
because I knew. And I'm only 19, but looking at even like a 16-year-old now, I see that how the age is so different. And to imagine, even myself, and I'm sure you've experienced this, like as you get older, each year you look back at somebody who is 17 and just see how vulnerable and impressionable they are. And
yeah.
that fact people take advantage of that makes me really sick, and I think it's horrible.
It's really terrible. Yeah. And I think also like being a teacher now, it makes me angry about what happened to me in a way that I just like didn't before, because I I think teaching is sacred. Like
Mhm.
I feel like it's my responsibility to, like, when I walk into a classroom, it's my responsibility to take care of these students and to support
Yeah.
them and to encourage them and to give them great things to read and try to support them in writing
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, have them be excited about things, and to have someone go into a classroom, to go into a school and look for, you know, having their ego stroked, for having something else stroked, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like, to be going into a school looking for anything other than how can I help and protect these students? What can I get? Like, hey, who can I, you know, sexualize? Like, who can I, like, try to sleep with? Like, it's it's just terrible. It's
Horrible. And I'm sure being a teacher now makes you, and I love that you became a teacher and didn't let that experience like change the way that you
yeah,
believe a teacher should be, and the fact that you can be like an exemplary teacher.
yeah.
I
I try.
well, you're doing great. You know, it's this. And you talk a lot about how, you know, the idea of Lolita is presented a lot in literature and how language and literature can affect us a lot. How do you think the sort of like desensitization that happens around this topic affected you and affects other young women, especially?
Well, I think it all sort of goes together with the sexualization of young women. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think it all sort of like works in the same vein, and it all sort of builds on top of each other. You know, the idea of Lolita as this very sexual, dangerous being, when we're really
Right.
talking about
The dangerous
victims.
one.
Right. She's the dangerous one. Right. It's the 16-year-old that you got to watch out for, not the adult men who
Mm-hmm.
are, yeah, yeah,
Very
it's
capable of making a good decision. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, it was totally normal for me to have the crush on the teacher. Like,
Yeah.
that's fine. Like, that's completely developmentally appropriate. It's socially appropriate. Like, that's not the problem. The problem is that an adult man was like, hey, she's got a crush on me. Like, let me see if I can sleep with her. You know, like, I was
Yeah.
asking for help. I wasn't asking to be fucked, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
And I think it's realizing like it wasn't your job to say no as a 17-year-old student.
no,
And
it was
the
his.
fact that, you know, I was doing
Yeah.
research even more about this topic, and there's like a whole genre of rock that's about underage girls.
Yeah.
It's so like blown up in the media and the things that we see
Yeah.
that almost becomes normal. And then, you know, we're told these stories that she's dangerous, or like, oh, you're trouble, I have to look out for you. And I was told
Yeah.
that a lot when I was younger because I was put in these rooms with older people,
Yeah.
and starting from when I was 15. And so many times I had, especially older men, say, you know, oh, you're trouble. Um, like that it's like my fault,
Yeah.
and that they're not capable. Like they're like, I have to, you know, oh, you're gonna get me in trouble. I'm like, no, you're gonna get you in trouble.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that when you're a young woman.
You
You
think it's a
think people
compliment.
tell you, yeah, you think it's a compliment, and you also think, yeah, it's your
Yeah.
fault. You know, like you
Yeah.
being there is a problem. But also that kind of feeds your self-confidence, I think, as a young woman, to be told, oh, I'm like
Totally.
irresistible.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It
yeah,
gives you this it gives you this sense of power, but it's not actual power.
no,
It's completely
it disguises itself as power, and I think that's why this is so dangerous for young women, because it's disguised as power.
yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
it's really just grooming and manipulation, and it
Yeah.
happens so much.
It happens so much. Yeah. I mean, I still hear from readers not almost, I hear from readers every day, like
Mm-hmm.
in my DMs, emails, messages, whatever. And like what happened is just so common. It's just
Mm-hmm.
so common. And
Yeah.
I hear from these women who, you know, the situation is a lot like theirs. Either like literally it's like, oh yeah, I was with a teacher, or, you know, a coach, or someone from church, or an older person in the, you know, in their family. I mean, it's so pervasive in that this is the way that we talk about young women.
Yeah.
And
And that for so long, I mean, I think, but that's what's so beautiful about your book, is that for so long these young women could have been believing that it was their fault and not realizing what happened to them, you know, and the way that you reading Lolita opened your eyes when you were in college. I think that that's what your book is doing for women now. Um, and it's
I'm
just
trying. I hope so.
it's such a better narrative to be telling. That isn't okay, and like it shouldn't be ever put on the woman, especially, you know, it baffles me that it is. But I mean, how does it feel to you when young women reach out to you saying, you know, they've had a similar experience and that your book has really affected them like it has to me?
Oh, it makes me cry. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's truly the best. It's truly the best part of having written a book, or this book in particular. You know, the first time I got a message that was saying, and it was before the book was even published, and she had gotten like an advance copy or something, and this girl just DM'd me and said, you know, thank you so much. I read the book. I loved it. And saying that she had something similar happen to her, and like she felt seen and understood and not alone,
Mm-hmm.
which are all the things that I wanted so badly to.
You needed a you when you were 17.
Yes, I just bawled. I started bawling when I got that message. I was like, oh
I'm
my
sure, yeah.
God. It's so emotional, and it's honestly, like, without a doubt, it's the best part of having written this book, to know that like I am helping other young women not feel alone.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I think when I think back to what happened, one of the biggest words that sort of like comes up when I think about it is being alone. You know, I was so isolated. And of course that was also like, that was
That's
part of
a good part of
depression.
it.
Yeah. And that was also part of the abuse and the manipulation. You know, when you talk about a domestic violence relationship, one of the first steps is for the abuser to isolate his victim.
Right.
You know, always
So that you don't have someone to go to who might bring up the fact that it's not okay.
Yeah.
As long as he can control it, you know, then it continues to go on.
Yeah. And, you know, this was a secret. And it was a secret because, you know, and it was secret, and it was sexy, and it was because I was special, and it was just because no one else would understand our love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like, looking back, it's like, oh my, you know, it's funny. At first, when I was working on the book, I was really angry at me. And then as I worked more on the book, I was like, no, I'm angry at him.
Yeah, as you should be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's natural to go through that. Like, how could I not have seen this? How could I have been so stupid? But then you realize, like, there is no experience in your life that you would have had to prepare you for that. No one should have to be prepared for that. And once you reach the point of understanding whose fault it was, I think that that's where the healing begins. And like, that's amazing that you did that, and that you can give that opportunity to other women as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so grateful, and I'm just so grateful. And it's unquestionably the best part. It's unquestionably the best part.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned that you kept a lot of journals during that time. What was the experience like of reading those back?
Horrible.
Like, so painful, right?
Horrible. Yeah. Horrible. Even the parts that like weren't about like the teacher, just to read and face like who I was as it was horrifying. I was like, oh my God, like, how could you be so silly, like so stupid, like right. You know, it's very, very, very embarrassing. And just like full of shame, very difficult. I do not recommend people reading your high school journals unless you have like a specific reason to, like, don't do it. Like, don't be like, you know what, this weekend I'm gonna have a fun weekend and reread my high school. No,
it's not like a fun time. It's not a funny thing to do.
No.
Yeah, that's definitely a deep dive. I've even had moments of like, I'll go back and read journals that I wrote, and it's just, it breaks my heart. I want to like hug myself. It also makes me so angry that I'm like, how were you thinking this way when this was not, like, someone should have just shook you and been like, this is not what's happening. And I went through a lot of that.
Yeah. Oh, I went through that exact same thing, and I would alternate between like wanting to give myself a hug and also just be like, what were you thinking?
Right. But the thing is, like, again, you would have had no preparation for that. Nobody gets
No.
preparation to be preyed on, thankfully. But that's why, you know, your story is so important, because you have to see the signs and you have to know
Yeah.
sort of what the red flags are. And that's, I think, what you're doing for so many people. So
I'm
I think it's
trying.
amazing.
Yeah.
And what do you want people to take away from the book? Like, what did you hope people, especially young, impressionable women, would get from your experience? Because I think, you know, it's so unfortunate that people have to go through this, but the fact that you can make a difference from it, it shows that it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah. I think my goal in the book, like when I was writing it, because the first two parts are very, very written very close to like 17-year-old me. So
Mm-hmm.
I really tried to show a reader, this is how this happens. You know, like it's not maybe as simple as you thought it was. It's
Right.
perhaps more complicated. And so my goal was sort of to have a reader understand how it happened. And I really just want people to walk away sort of having shaken off that fantasy, that, or at least having those sorts of really misogynistic, dangerous ideas about young women and power and misogyny and sex when you're, I really just hope people leave maybe thinking about those in different ways. And again, like knowing that some people read the book and feel no longer alone, feel understood,
Mm-hmm.
feel seen, like that's the biggest goal. I mean,
Yeah.
that was my number one hope. And to know that that's happened is just like amazing. So,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I can personally say I'm so grateful that you wrote this book and like decided to share your story. And I know that you get messages every day, but I don't know if you'll ever truly understand like how much it's impacted me, and I'm sure so many other
Yeah.
young women. So I am so grateful to you for being on here to talk about it, and just for being you, and for healing and being so honest and candid about what happened to you, and also being a good teacher and being like a good person and not letting this experience ruin you, because you're awesome, and like thank you, truly.
That was also like, that really was part of the point as well. I feel like so often when we like even watch movies or something about like some sort of like horrible trauma like that, it ends when that's over.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end is like this broken woman, you know?
Right.
And it's like, no, like that's not where the story ends.
Right.
The story goes
Interesting.
on.
You even say that. You know, you open the third section of your book with there is no part 3 in Lolita.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting, because can you talk more sort of about that choice to say, you know, to go into your part 3 when normally these stories don't get a part 3?
Yeah, it was definitely, that was a really conscious choice. That was a decision that I made where I was like, look, I don't just want to end this on, okay, I escaped. Great. I left him. Story's over.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no. And I wanted to create an opportunity for talking about the patterns and how something traumatic like this can affect the rest of your life, and
Right.
how, you know, maybe, you know, you're not being abused anymore, but it still continues and it still echoes. And I also then want to share how I did some amount of healing, and that it didn't define me, even though it continued in different ways and
Right.
always will, still does. I mean, I'm constantly figuring out new things about all of this.
Mm-hmm.
There will always be new processing to do.
Absolutely.
You know?
I'm sure you
Um,
realize a new thing every day about it, and sorry, Milo's being insane right now.
oh, it's okay.
But I'm sure you realize something new about it every day, and to
Yeah.
like continue to grow from it, and take it as it comes. And I'm, you know, like I said, nothing can prepare you for this. So the healing process
No.
is unique to everyone, but to
Yeah.
use your healing process, you know,
Yeah.
as an example for other women, I think is like the most beautiful thing that you can do.
Yeah. I didn't want any reader to come away from this book thinking, oh, she was ruined. She was broken.
Right.
This it's like, no, no.
And I
Women,
think that's what's so cool is, you know, while you are the victim and you know that, you don't victimize yourself, especially in the beginning, because you did tell it from how you experienced it. So,
yeah,
yeah, I think that that's so great for people to realize, like, you know, this happened to her, but she's
yeah,
going to be okay, and she continues to be okay, and she continues to grow. And yeah, I think that's amazing.
yeah, I completely agree. It was really something conscious that I wanted to do. I thought it was really important. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, because so often these stories, that's how they end, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we're resilient, we're strong, we can be more than, and that also has to do with any sort of trauma, like any sort of difficulty that someone faces at any point in their life, you know, like you can be more than that, you can grow beyond that, you can continue.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really important message.
Yeah.
So that was also like part of why I wanted this to be a memoir, because it's like, this is the real story. This happens, it's awful, it can echo, you can also do great things, and you know, a happy, love-filled life. So
Yeah.
it was,
And you've done that. So,
I'm
like,
trying. I mean, I got, you know, yeah, I've got some wonderful cats who love me. My mom is visiting me right now. So
oh,
yeah.
great. Oh, I love that you said my mother, who will never read this. Has she read it now?
It's not, no.
Really?
The dedication I really thought was too like earnest and like sincere, and then I was like, oh, fuck it, like this is what I think.
It's
But
your book, it's your life, it's your story.
no,
Absolutely.
I
I
know.
love it. The intro is like my favorite part.
People really, because the thing is, and like grad, like, that was a big deal, you know. She's 90 something now, 93. So you know, back in the day, 70 years ago, that was a very big deal. Um, so encouraging of me as a reader, as a
Right.
writer. She has dementia now, and she's in a memory care facility in Florida, and so she knows I wrote the book, and she's because she has dementia, you know, she sort of gets confused about time, so I didn't want to give her the full book and then have her like read some sections and be like, oh my god, Allie's being abused right now. So what I
Yeah.
did, what, because she, you know, she's got dementia and she's older.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did, a copy of the book and cut out all of the difficult parts. So the book, it lost like 2/3 of the book, gone. Anything that was at
Yeah,
all
like
like
the difficult
extra,
parts, it's all difficult.
um, yeah, she had edited version. Like have a copy that she can like hold and be like, my granddaughter wrote this, you know. But yeah, we thought it would be too tough
Mm-hmm.
for her
Yeah.
at this point. But you know, so she would
Yeah.
be so scandalized. I'm so proud. It's full of me and you know me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dakota Johnson. She was in all those like 50 Shades of Grey movies.
Yes, I do.
So her mother is Melanie Griffith.
Right.
And there was some example of like, or some moment like they were both on the red carpet. And the paparazzi,
Right. Yeah.
supporting her, but I do not need to see her in these sex scenes. And poor Dakota Johnson is like, oh my god, mom, like, but,
It's like, ah!
yeah, like, mother.
Mom.
It's like,
Yeah.
I know you're a great writer. I fully support you. But, and I was like, no. You know, like, she might read, but no time soon.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I will read it enough times for me and her. But thank you so much for being on here, and I'm so grateful to you. And I just think you're awesome, and like, thank you for being you.
I'm so grateful to have gotten to, meet you and to,
Yeah, that's how
you know,
everyone knows now.
I know, but your book club is so wonderful and it's so exciting to be part of a literary community like this and to have you, spearheading this wonderful book club. It's such a big deal.
Thank
So it's
you.
great.
Well,
Yeah.
it wouldn't exist without amazing writers and creative people like you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful to have been here. Yeah.
I'm so grateful too. Have a wonderful evening, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah.
I'll text you.
Bye. I
Bye.
know. We'll text later. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. As you can see, Allison is amazing, and I'm just like so grateful for her and all the incredible work she's doing. Milo is currently playing with this toy like a crazy man, so I'm going to sign off.